Looking all the statistics with some prime analytics. We got ourselves a group of funky fresh critics. Home runs, and free throws, goals, fights, and touchdowns. Pocket says it all, so it's best you stick around. Analyzing this, analyzing that. Putting a perspective on every single step. Now turn up your volume and join the team. Things are about to get started, it's 1st and 15.
And hello, and welcome to Main and Center here in Batavia, New York, the site of WBTA Studios. We're recording 1st and 15. My name's Pete Zehler. I'm your host, alongside Tylor Klien and Mike Rose, as we are here for our AFC South episode. We've made it through the West teams. We made it through the NFC South. Now we're going to be at officially the halfway point of the NFL as we get through the AFC South here. So as we've been doing, well, first off, let me ask, how are you guys doing? Mike, I know you're calling in today from Buffalo, New York.
Yes, the Glow Region high school sports teams have just been too good. They've exhausted me, so I did not make the trip into the studio today. But I'm fired up and ready to be back after a week off last week.
Yeah, I mean, for me, these two have been pretty busy covering sectional sports in our area. So I've been golfing while they've been doing that, and each time I go out, I seem to get worse. So I don't really have an explanation for that, but that's what I've been up to.
All right, so yeah, Tyler sucks at golf. I suck at golf. Mike's golfing on Saturday. We got all sorts of.
I also suck at golf. So.
Yeah.
I'm taking lessons right now, and somehow I feel like my swing gets worse after each one. I don't know how that works.
Yeah,
you're taking lessons. Well, you're doing more than me and Tyler. Me and Tyler just go to BWs and just golf terribly, and then get really upset about it.
Yeah.
So I'm trying, man. I'm really trying.
All right, well, I believe in Mike Rose. I think Mike Rose is on the up and up from what I heard there. Speaking about being on the up and up, the Tennessee Titans maybe. Let's talk about them a little bit here. So, as always, I think we've been starting with the free agency first. We'll do that again here. For the Titans, kind of an interesting free agency. They did make some moves. Probably the biggest move they made in terms of getting media coverage and whatnot was Wan'Dale Robinson. Who they brought on for
John Franklin Myers.
Well, I was going to get to that, Tyler. It was literally right.
Well, that was probably the biggest deal.
I was just saying in terms of the media talked about it quite a bit.
John Franklin Myers.
Okay, well, can we just go through the list, Tyler? Wan'Dale Robinson, who got signed to $19 million a year on a 4-year, $78 million deal, which is a little high for Wan'Dale Robinson, if you ask me. But they bring him on to a 4-year deal worth $78 million total. They also bring on John Franklin Myers out of the after trading with the Jets. They traded T'Vondre Sweat for Jermaine Johnson. They now bring on John Franklin Myers to a 3-year, $63 million deal. They bring on Alontae Taylor, the cornerback, to a 3-year, $60 million deal. They bring on Cordell Flott, the corner, the corner, to a 3-year, $45 million deal. They bring on Mitch Trubisky to a 2-year deal. Trubisky getting back with Brian Dable in Tennessee. They bring on Josh Williams, the corner, I believe they have extended him. Austin Schlottman, the center. They bring back Daniel Bellinger, or actually out of New York they bring Daniel Bellinger, another Brian Dable guy will be coming back. Cordell Volson, the offensive guard, they bring from Cincinnati. Jordan Elliott, the defensive tackle. Jacob Martin, the linebacker. Tommy Townsend, the punter. Joey Sly, the kicker. Bryce Oliver, the receiver. Malik Herring, the defensive end. Kylan Grayson, the tight end. Austin DeCluse, the offensive tackle. And Julius Chestnut, the running backs, coming back. They made a lot of moves. Not all of them are huge moves, but they did spend quite a bit of money here. One of those that kind of stands out to me is Alontae Taylor. I liked watching Alontae Taylor play on the Saints for a few years. I always thought he was a little bit underrated there because they've been so bad for the last couple of years. He kind of slid under the radar. He gets paid, though. He gets 3 years, $60 million from the Titans. He's a very physical corner, and I think he'll play well in the system that they're going to try to establish there with Robert Saleh. The Titans, Mike, making some moves here. And where are you at on this free agency?
They were aggressive, which is what you have to be, I think, anytime you have a quarterback on that rookie contract like they do with Cam Ward, the first overall pick from a couple years ago. And, they went out. Alontae Taylor is a guy who you mentioned. I like him at corner. Cordell Flott, I maybe don't like as much. The other corner that they signed from the Giants. They signed a lot of ex-Giants.
And the Giants haven't been very good.
It was pretty clear that Brian Dable had some say in this free agency class, given that there's 4 ex-New York Giants that joined this team and 3 of those guys from the offensive side of the ball. So it's obvious that, he let it known who some guys he liked to bring in. Wan'Dale Robinson's an interesting one, right? Because he gets paid pretty handsomely. And, he's been productive to an extent. He had his best year of his career last year with Jackson Dart. He was not a super efficient guy with his catches. Historically, he gets a lot of short catches. He's not great after the catch.
Yeah, we kind of mentioned him,
Which
Mike, on
hasn't
an
been in the
episode
NFL.
before. I remember. I don't remember if it was the draft episode or which one it was. But we mentioned he's the guy that his stats are better than he is, and
Yeah.
he's a guy that puts up big numbers. But like, it's just if you actually watch him play, it never feels like he's doing much. He's just kind of catching like 5-yard hitches.
Right, but it was better last year, objectively.
Yeah,
It absolutely was.
absolutely.
He had great numbers last year. So it'll be interesting to see how he meshes with, Cam Ward there. And, we'll mention some of the other receivers and new additions to that room when we get to their draft. But I think Tyler hit the nail on the head. John Franklin Myers, I think, is the biggest addition to this team in terms of the impact he'll make. I think Denver, if you ask any Denver fans, they'll just rave about, what his impact was on that defense last season. And so he, comes in, and all of a sudden this Titans front looks like it could be one of the better fronts in the NFL. I mean, you have him with Jeffrey Simmons and Jermaine Johnson.
Mm-hmm.
It's
That's
worth
a
noting too,
really
Mike. You
good
mentioned
front.
the Dable connection with the Giants, but Franklin Myers does have a connection with Robert Saleh from back in his Jets days.
Yeah, I mean
Absolutely.
their offseason, I think Dable definitely had an input on it, and obviously Robert Saleh definitely had an input on it as well. A lot of defense, a lot of big defensive ads, and a lot of offensive ads as well. So, ex-Giants rather, but I mean, being aggressive with a young rookie quarterback, first overall, pick last year on a rookie deal is exactly what you want to see from a team, and that's exactly what they did in free agency. So.
All right, so that's the free agent class here for the Tennessee Titans. Now, talking about the draft, obviously the biggest move, drafting at 4th overall, they take Carnell Tate, the receiver. I know I think in the draft episode, we all liked that move. You got to get weapons for your young quarterback. Well, they did that signing Wan'Dale Robinson. They did that now, drafting Carnell Tate 4th overall. I know all of us had a Carnell Tate as at least a top 2 receiver in the draft. No one was anti-Carnell Tate here, really, so they go and get a big receiver for their second-year quarterback. Also in the first round, they took Keldrick Falk, the edge rusher out of Auburn, who had a very productive career for the Tigers. The second round, they take Anthony Hill Jr., the linebacker out of Texas. And in day 3, they took Fernando Caramono Jr., the guard out of Arkansas, Nick Singleton, the running back from Penn State, Jackie Marshall, the defensive tackle from Baylor, Pat Coogan, the center from Indiana, and Jaron Kanik, the tight end out of Oklahoma. So obviously talking about their draft, got to talk about Carnell Tate a little bit, the big physical receiver they're going to get from Ohio State, who had a very good year last year with the Buckeyes. Certainly, I got to imagine last year their receiver room was terrible. I mean, their receiver room, you could argue, is the worst receiver room in the NFL. It was just not good whatsoever. But they really did a good job of bolstering that up. And I'll tell you what, I do like Keldrick Falk too. He's a big defensive end. He is 6'6", 274 pounds, good size, very quick on the edge. He was a guy I kind of was thinking was going to go a little bit higher. When he started to slide, he was a guy I was hoping the Bills might be able to snag. He did end up going to the Titans where the Bills could get to him, though. But I do like both of their first-round picks as I pass it over to my guy, Mike.
Yeah, I think Falk's an interesting one too, especially because he's not going to be asked to have a major role. We just talked about how much talent they have in that front, so he can kind of ease himself in a little bit into this system, really kind of get integrated into what Robert Saleh is going to ask him to do. And I think by the end of the year, you're going to see him. He's only 20 years old, so he's a young guy, and I think by the end of the year, he's really going to pick it up and be an impact guy. Anthony Hill from Texas, I think, is an interesting one because he's probably a second-round pick only based on the fact of the position he plays. I think he was one of the better, off-ball linebackers in this draft. He goes 28th pick of the second round. He probably fell a little bit based on, his production last year, but super athletic. Over 250 tackles in his career with Texas, and he was just always around the football, and he has the ability to drop back in coverage as well. And I think they have some interesting day 3 picks. I think if you're a college football fan, you're familiar with a lot of these day 3 picks, more so than, I think you would with most day 3 picks. Nick Singleton was obviously a guy who had a huge impact over his career at Penn State, and I thought he could go a lot earlier than he did. I mean, he ends up going around 5. I thought he could have went on day 2, and I wouldn't have been totally shocked.
Well, I think it probably a little bit was his senior year. He kind of lost some of his role a little bit in Penn State, and that probably hurt his draft stock a bit, I'd imagine.
He did. He definitely did. But, I mean, to me, he's a guy who is a 3-down back upside. He can catch the ball out of the backfield. I like Singleton, and I wouldn't be surprised if Singleton has an impact on this team as soon as this year, and we'll talk about that when we get to the depth chart. And then I got to talk about my guy Jared Kanik because we all know I'm an Oklahoma guy, and he is such a cool story. So he was a linebacker for his entire college career until last year, and he basically went to Brent Venables and the coaching staff, and he was kind of just a depth linebacker. He went to the staff. He's like, "Hey, I think I can do more for us. Like, what do you guys think?" And so they said, "You know what? Let's make him a tight end." And he had over 500 yards receiving last year after switching to tight end. Basically in one off season. So he's going to be an interesting guy, and obviously has the ability to block as well in the running game, and is very physical as a former linebacker. He's going to be able to play special teams because of that background as well. So I think he's an interesting guy who, as a 7th round pick, has a path to the roster as well. And then Pat Coogan was just a very entertaining personality on that Indiana offensive line, rock solid in the middle of that unit for the Hoosiers, working with Fernando Mendoza, and that offensive line got a lot of buzz. They were the offensive MVP of the Rose Bowl and all that, and Coogan was the anchor of that unit, so to speak. So I expect he'll have a long career, even if it's not as a starter. He's going to be around the NFL for a long time because he's just such a steady hand at a spot where it's really difficult to find guys who can play the position at a high level.
Yeah, I love their first 3 picks. Cardinal Tate, I think, is we talked about it on our first episode, and adding weapons for your quarterback, your young quarterback. I don't have any problem with doing that. The Falk and the Hill edition or draft picks, I think Mike already talked about it, about the offense or the defensive line that the Titans are going to be rolling out next year. It looks like it's going to be one of the better ones in the NFL. Falk is not a guy that you're asking to start immediately, and he's going to be a guy that you can rotate in and out, and fresh bodies, and I think that's a great depth piece. I know it's a later first round draft pick, but you don't need him to come in early and do anything that he might not be ready for. And same with Anthony Hill. Mike talked about the 250 tackles in college. Pretty productive in college. This was a guy that I wanted the Raiders to maybe target before we ended up going after Quay Walker and Kobe Dean in free agency as a potential day 2 pick. So I like those 3 picks. I think especially those 2 defensive ones are going to be good for Robert Saleh's defense. And then I'm glad that Mike said something about Pat Coogan. This is another guy I wanted the Raiders to maybe look at in the later rounds. Just a classic leader. Mike said it, Rose Bowl MVP, so important for this team last year, or for that Indiana team last year, and Fernando Mendoza. So, I think it was a good draft overall for the Titans, for sure. So far, their offseason's been aggressive, and they drafted well, in my opinion, and we'll see where that leads them.
All right, so that's kind of the breakdown of the offseason for the Titans. Now into predictions for the Titans that finished last year. So I'll start out. Looking at this roster, I do want to say that I think they absolutely improved. They made a lot of moves. They spent some money, made some good moves in the draft. I do think this is an improved roster. Looking at their offense, Cam Ward, he was fine last year as a rookie. He didn't really have much to work with. Alec O'Maynor was really his best receiver. It was supposed to be Calvin Ridley, but Calvin really sucked last year. So really this is a team that I think that Cam Ward, he'll have to take that next step this year now, but he's going to have the weapons that should help him do that with Cardinal Tate, Wan'Dale Robinson, and maybe Calvin Ridley not being the number 1 guy. Maybe that'll help him get a little bit better this year, or if not, A.O. Maynor can continue to do what he did last year. I agree completely with what Mike said about Nicholas Singleton. I think Nick Singleton could take over that running back room by the end of the year. Tony Pollard's getting up there. He was productive last year. I'll give Tony Pollard that, but he's getting up there. Running backs don't tend to age well. Tajay Spears seems to be injured all the time, and even when he's not, it doesn't seem like they want to give him a lot of play. I do think Nicholas Singleton could end up working into that number 1 spot by the end of the year. My biggest concern, their offensive line sucks. It was really bad last year. Now, they obviously have made some moves to try to adjust that, and it's not for lack of trying. They've invested in this offensive line. They drafted Peter Skoronski very high a couple years ago. They drafted J.C. Latham pretty high. They've made some moves to try to improve this line. However, last year it did not look very good. Hopefully some of these young guys with another year under their belt of playing in the NFL get another offseason and they can take that next step. That is where I have a lot of concern, though, is with this line. Defensively, I don't got to say much else that you guys didn't say about the defensive line. It's going to be a very, very good defensive line. Jeffrey Simmons, in my opinion, maybe one of the most underrated players in the NFL. He doesn't seem to get the flowers just because he plays on a team that's been so bad for so many years. The secondary, I mentioned I like getting Alontae Taylor. We'll see. Outside of Alontae Taylor, I don't really love a lot that they have going on in the secondary. They don't really have a lot of depth at corner, and that could be a really big problem for this team. At safety, they just have some guys there with Amani Hooker and Kevin Winston Jr. and Tony Adams. But this isn't a secondary that inspires confidence. I would say this is a very low middle of the pack linebacking room. Defensively, they're going to be good up front. I just am worried about that second and third levels of the defense. I don't think they'll be very good there. And offensively, I think they're going to have a hard time protecting Cam Ward once again unless some of these younger guys do take that next step, which is possible. Quick side note, too, they currently have 4 quarterbacks rostered, and I completely forgot that Hendon Hooker existed. But Hendon Hooker.
Because Hendon Hooker is really bad.
Hendon Hooker is still on an NFL team. He is the 4th-string quarterback. I completely forgot about Will Levis, too, so them signing Mitch Trubisky must just be them saying, like, we're done with Will Levis. We don't believe in Will Levis. It's the Mitch Trubisky time if Cam Ward gets hurt.
I wouldn't be surprised if Will Levis gets potentially dealt late in camp this year to a quarterback needy team who needs like a backup or just another veteran in the room for like a day 3 pick or something like that. That wouldn't surprise me.
Was Mitchell Trubisky with the Bills when Brian Dable was there?
Yeah, he was.
Yes.
Maybe there's some familiarity there, and
Yeah, that could be it too.
Help get Cam Ward up to speed.
Classic, like get my young quarterback up to speed with a guy who knows the system.
Not for nothing, but Will Levis went first pick of the second round the year before they took Cam Ward. So maybe not that there ever was any competition between Will Levis or Cam Ward, but maybe they just want to get Will Levis out of the building since clearly it's not his team. And I'm sure Will Levis, as a young quarterback, probably wants to go to a team where he might have an opportunity to play and show his worth.
You know a quarterback room that could use Will Levis?
Who?
Arizona.
Yes.
Honestly, yeah. That might not be the worst fit to get a young quarterback in there warming up. But
what do they have to lose?
Yeah,
that's not the worst idea I've ever heard. Will Levis did show flashes at times, but we're getting off the point here. This is not the Will Levis episode right now. But yes, so in conclusion, I like a lot of what they did. I think they made major improvements. I still have a lot of concerns about the offensive line, and I have a lot of concerns about the second and third levels of the defense, Mike. I'm not, and even the receiver room too, honestly. Like we both mentioned how Wan'Dale Robinson, he's not a guy that we necessarily have the biggest belief in. Calvin Ridley sucked last year. We know Calvin Ridley's capable of better than that, but he did suck last year. There's no denying that. So, I mean, really, they have Carnell Tate, but past that, I really don't know if this receiver room, there's no guarantees after that. I mean, even Carnell Tate's a rookie. So, certainly, I guess my prediction for the team, I still think they'll be last in this division. The other 3 teams are pretty solid. I think the other 3 teams have better rosters. I don't remember how many games they won last year, but I think they probably will win more than they did last year, but I don't think by a dramatic margin.
Yeah, I think they've improved their roster, certainly, but I think you hit it right on. There's still a lot of holes on this team. They are pretty much basically still relying on Calvin Ridley to be their number 2 outside receiver this year because Wan'Dale is going to probably play out of the slot and Tate's going to be your other outside guy. And, I mean, Calvin Ridley straight up got benched last year. Not only was he not productive, he straight up got benched. There's no ways around this.
On a team that's terrible at receiver, he got benched.
On a team with no receivers, exactly.
Yeah.
They didn't have anybody. You mentioned Io Manor. He's a guy who I liked a little bit coming out of the draft last year, but there's not a ton of upside with him. He's going to be a guy who plays for a long time as like a number 4. You don't want him as your number 1 or 2 like he was last year for this team. So there's a lot of issues still with the offense, and even the tight end room. They paid Daniel Bellinger a lot of money.
I didn't even mention that.
Gunnar Helm. They brought in Kylan Granson. They have Panic, who they drafted this year. But, there's no proven guy in that room that you feel really good about. And you mentioned the running back room where Pollard was more productive than I think a lot of people probably thought he would be last year, but he definitely wasn't explosive like he was in his Dallas days. You can see the tread on the tires starting to catch up with Tony Pollard. So it's an interesting looking offense. I still believe in Cam Ward, but I don't think this is going to be a team that can take that big leap where all of a sudden we're talking about the Titans as a potential playoff team, especially in this division with 3 other teams that I think are a lot more talented. And then you mentioned the defense. I mean, there's not much more I need to say. The front's going to be great. The back 7 has some real holes that are likely going to be exposed and cost them games. even us all liking Alante Taylor, that's your most proven commodity in the secondary. That doesn't really inspire
By
a ton
far.
of confidence for me. So it's tough to feel great about overall what the Titans look like, but young quarterback could take a leap. Maybe Calvin Ridley remembers he's Calvin Ridley, pre-gambling, and maybe they win 7 games this year, but they're probably going to be picking in the upper third of the NFL draft again next year. But I still do think they're going to be a better football team than the product that was on the field last year, even if their win total maybe doesn't indicate a huge leap.
So you have them also last in the division, Mike?
Yes,
Okay.
pretty comfortably, I'd say last into it.
All right, Tyler?
I'll do it. I'll start out with it. The coaching staff. I love this coaching staff. The 2 ex-New York head coaches, Robert Saleh and Brian Daboll. I think it's great that they're together and down in Nashville, Tennessee. I'm really curious to see what this team looks like this defense coached under Robert Saleh. I mean, we've talked about the defensive front. I think that this can be I think that this team has all the abilities that it's late in the year. They're hovering around 500. They're all of a sudden in a wild card potential opportunity here, and you might just not want to play them. For me, it's like, what kind of a jump do we get for a year 2 Cam Ward? Like, does he take a significant step forward? You guys have talked about the weapons around him. Like, how great are the weapons around him? Probably not that great for him to really take too much of a jump. But
I just wish they were a little better.
Yeah,
If they were just a little better, I would be like, you know what? Big jump could be coming.
Yeah.
But it's just like,
If they spent that $78 million on Wan'Dale Robinson somewhere else, I'd probably be a little bit more excited, I feel like.
If Wan'Dale Robinson was Alex Pierce, I would feel better about it.
Yeah,
I agree.
No,
if Wan'Dale Robinson was Romeo Dobbs, I think I would feel better.
Yeah.
About this.
No, I also agree with that. And we've talked about it in the past about the development of Brian Daboll and young quarterbacks, and that's really kind of only Josh Allen. But he's kind of just known for this role, and again, going back into an offensive coordinator role, and there's gonna be a lot of conversation is what does he do for the development of Cam Ward? I actually was talking about it off air about Cam Ward's changing his diet. He's apparently slimmed down and trying to slim down. He's down 10 pounds. So we'll I mean, the year 2 leap of Cam Ward is very, very big on what season that the Titans have. I think that this defense is going to be a tough defense and a frisky defense, and I think this will be a tough team. I agree with Mike. 7 wins, I think, is not out of the realm of possibilities, especially when you're playing the last place division schedule. You just never know. Teams always take weird leaps. So I'm not like completely off the Titans. I don't think they're a lock to finish last. I'll say that. Do I think they'll finish last? Yeah, probably. But I don't think it's a surefire, yeah, they're going to finish last. I think the Colts and the Jaguars, injuries happen. You never know. Like, you saw the downfall that the Colts had with the injuries after they lost Daniel Jones. So I'm not going to completely eliminate it, but we'll see. We'll see.
I said pretty confidently I had the Titans last, but the more I think about it, I'm not that high on the Colts, and we're going to talk about them in a second, I know.
Yeah.
But
Yep.
I could see a world where the Titans finish ahead of the Colts. Like, I don't think that's that crazy.
No, I don't
I
think
think
so
the
either.
top 2 are head and shoulders above the bottom 2
Yeah.
in this
Yeah, I
division.
don't know why I said the Jaguars there. I really meant the Colts.
I don't know why I said the Jaguars.
Yeah.
either.
Look,
if the Jaguars finish below the Titans, I'd be stunned.
Yeah, if the Jaguars finish below the Titans.
Yeah, they would need a lot of injuries. Like Trevor Lawrence would need
I
to
think
go
even
down.
if Trevor Lawrence got injured, I'd still be stunned if they finish below the Titans.
I don't know. I think the Jaguars could still be all right. But yeah, am I picking the Colts to finish ahead of the Titans? Yes. Would I be like stunned if at the end of the year the Titans are ahead of the Colts? I don't think so.
No, I don't really love the Colts that much either, to the point where I'd be surprised if Tennessee was a 7-win team and the Colts were a 6-win team and they split games over the regular season or something like that. Wouldn't surprise me a terrible amount. So that's not what I'm going to predict. I'm going to predict that right now. I think the Colts will be a little better, but once again, it just wouldn't be a stunning result. But all right, well, that is where we're all at on the last place Titans after last year. Speaking of the Colts, we have them coming up next year on 1st and 15. After starting last year 8-2, they finished the year 8-9. So we'll get to talk about that a little bit. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. Welcome back to First and 15 here on the WBTA Sports Network. Pete Zehler alongside Tylor Klien and Mike Rose. And we are just got done with the Tennessee Titans. Time to move on to the Indianapolis Colts, team that, as I mentioned in the last segment, they started last season 8-2 and then finished 8-9, losing their last 7 consecutive games. At one point, they had Phillip Rivers off the couch playing quarterback for them, and it was a real journey.
I forgot about that.
Yeah. Phillip Rivers off the couch and into the roster. So here's what the Colts did in the offseason. A lot of their moves were bringing back their guys. They brought back Daniel Jones to a 2-year, $88 million deal after he played phenomenally before getting injured. By the way, their losing streak did coincide kind of with Daniel Jones getting injured. I think their losing streak started while he was still playing, but I want to say in like the second or third game he got hurt.
You mean Phillip Rivers off the street didn't go well?
No, Phillip Rivers off the street. They almost beat the Super Bowl champion Seahawks. They were like 30 seconds away from beating the Super Bowl champion Seahawks with Phillip Rivers off the couch. But they bring back Alex Pierce to a 4-year, $116 million deal. They also traded away Michael Pittman. Doing so, Alex Pierce will now be the number 1 receiver for them, likely. They bring Arden Key into the house on a 2-year, $20 million deal. Michael Clemens out of the Jets, they bring to a 3-year, $17 million contract. They get Derek Nanandi. Jonathan Owens, the safety, signs a 1-year deal. Junior Thomas, the safety,
that
signs
means they get Simone Biles, too, by the way. That's big time.
Simone Biles will be in the house, yep. Junior Thomas signs a 1-year deal. Carson Tout, who doesn't even have a page on ESPN, the tight end, he gets a 1-year deal, so whoever he is. Jerry Tillery, the defensive tackle, he's going to help beef up that defensive line for them. Mo Alley Cox, who I feel like has been in the league for 30 years, the tight end.
Pete's about to tell us why he and Hayden Hurst are going to have great years.
They bring back I'm not
is like one of my favorite players in the league.
I want to say that Mo Alley Cox, I feel like every year he always catches like 2 touchdowns, but I always feel like when I like add him to a touchdown parlay sometimes, and I always feel like he gets that touchdown when I put him in the parlay. So Mo Alley Cox, I appreciate
Mo Alley
you.
Cox and
his story is so cool too.
Yeah, the basketball
you don't know
player.
About Mo Alley Cox. This dude was a stud at VCU on the basketball team.
Yeah.
And then he was just like, you know what? I'm gonna play football, and he's had like a 7-year NFL career.
Mo Alley Cox and Austin Hooper are going to be in all of Pete's touchdown parlays.
Yeah, I'll just pick a random week. I'll just pick a random week, and Mo Alley Cox will get it that week. That just seems to always happen, even though he gets like 2 a year. Obviously, he's the backup tight end. Tyler Warren's pretty good. They also get Cam Taylor-Britt to a 1-year deal. He was in Cincinnati, I want to say, last season, and they bring in Nick Westbrook-Akini, who I kind of forgot was in the league, and Akeem Davis-Gaither. They bring into the linebacker room. So that was their off-season moves in terms of free agency. Truthfully, in terms of what new they brought into the building, not a lot there. It was just a lot of keeping the guys they already had. And I know they didn't have a ton of cap room, so they kind of had to spend the money on the guys they wanted to keep in-house. And that's pretty much what I have no real comments on any of it. I'm not surprised they brought Daniel Jones back. They didn't have any better options, and he played very well before getting hurt, so I think that was the right move on their part. And Alec Pierce, while I'm not sure I'm completely sold that Alex Pierce is a 4-year, $116 million receiver, they felt like they needed to bring him back. They get rid of Michael Pittman, and they go all in on Alec Pierce. So that's where I'm at on that. I don't really have any strong feelings about this free agency class for the Colts.
Yeah, I mean, this was their biggest move. I mean, Alec Pierce, keeping him and Daniel Jones, keeping both of them were their biggest moves. I'm also not necessarily sold on Alec Pierce. I know, again, you're going to hear this with me probably as we continue the show because the Raiders had $1 million spent or billions of dollars to spend, it felt like, and we're just in on everybody. So this was a guy that Raiders fans and beat writers were just talking about all offseason. I didn't necessarily like the idea of paying this guy that much money, and I'm glad that they didn't. But yeah, I mean, this free agency class not doing really much, and like Pete said, it's just keeping those 2 guys was the big headliners.
I really like Alec Pierce, though. I think he emerged last year as like maybe the best downfield receiver in football.
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly what he does. He's really good at that.
You know, I mean, he had 1,000 yards last year on only 47 catches. I thought he really unlocked a part of that offense that they really needed, and I was all aboard the sign Alec Pierce, trade away Michael Pittman, kind of concept.
Yeah.
Because when we talk about the roster, I really like Josh Downs as well, who's they had there. as the number 2 receiver now behind Pierce. So I like keeping Pierce. I like, bringing back Daniel Jones. I think it was necessary. Like you said, there wasn't a lot of pivots that you could make unless you wanted to go back to Anthony Richardson. I don't think anybody really wants to do that.
Trade for Kyler Murray.
Yeah, that's
I
signed
guess
Tua.
that was an option in theory. But,
Yeah, there wasn't
again,
much.
These are not good options.
Yeah.
We
right.
talked about
Well, why
already,
try to take a risk on Kyler Murray when you took a risk on Daniel Jones and it looked like it was going to pay off? You might as well just stick with what you know at that point.
In division rival trade, Will Levis.
Yeah.
Basically, don't be the Minnesota Vikings, right? Like, it worked. Just keep the guy that it worked with, and don't try and reinvent the wheel like the Vikings did when they let Sam Darnold leave and go win the Super Bowl. So, I think the Colts probably wise to bring these guys back, and they didn't really lose much. They didn't really add much, but there was a point last year, right, where I think a lot of people were like, "This is the best team in the NFL."
I was never one of those guys.
I don't know if
like
I was
Rose.
that much, but like at least one of the better teams in the
I'm not
AFC.
saying any of us.
Yeah.
Oh no, you're 100% right.
Yeah,
I
you're
saw
right.
it. I'd be like watching ESPN in the break room at my old job, and people, a lot of guys were like, "Man, the Colts are really for real." Them and the Broncos, I was never on last year, and the Broncos did kind of prove me wrong going to the AFC Championship game. But the Colts,
And honestly, though, like, if you think about how the AFC broke last year, like if the Colts don't crumble to injuries, like the Colts being in the Super Bowl, I don't think would have been that crazy.
No.
They also get boat raced by Seattle the same way the Patriots do. But
yeah.
like the AFC was open enough last year where like
Now do they
there
get
was a
boat
time
raced?
last
Because
year I
Philip
thought the
Rivers
Colts
almost
would
beat the
come out.
Seahawks on this team.
Well, no, they would have got boat raced.
They got boat raced.
But
Absolutely smart.
But I just I was never in on them. I don't think anyone really thought they were going to collapse the way they did. I certainly didn't. I like once they were 8-2, I thought they were making the playoffs. I was like, yeah, this is going to be a team in the playoffs. I'll be curious to see how they do. But I was expecting them to be kind of that team that had a great record and gets bounced early in the playoffs. But like Mike said, the AFC playoffs was wacky last year. And if Daniel Jones doesn't get hurt, then I guess who really knows what happens? Well, part of what they were doing too was Jonathan Taylor was fantastic up to like the halfway point of last. Like he was like on track to like break every rushing record there was. He had like 1 million touchdowns, 1 million yards. He was going absolutely bananas. And he started to slow down before Daniel Jones got injured. And then after the Daniel Jones injury, and he became what defenses focused on. I mean, it's just kind of that was the end of it for Jonathan Taylor. But
yeah, unfortunately, when Riley Leonard and Phillip Rivers from the retirement home are your quarterbacks, nobody's feeling real threatened by those guys.
No, 110%. And yeah, so I'll be curious to see what it looks like this year. But yeah, let's get into the draft a little bit now for the Colts. They didn't have a first-round pick, so not a great start there, which I will say, we talked about their free agency. They didn't really add anyone new. They brought some guys back. This isn't a team that I would say is bulletproof and didn't have any weak spots, so that definitely hurts them a little bit. They didn't have a first-round pick to bolster up the roster. On the second round, though, they do take the linebacker out of Georgia, C.J. Allen. Third round, they go with A.G. Halsey, the safety out of LSU, which if you listen to the free agent moves, they signed like 3 safeties. They draft a safety in the third round. That tells you kind of how their safety room was last year. In the fourth round, they take Jalen Farmer, a guard out of Kentucky, Bryce Bottiger, a linebacker out of Oregon. In the fifth round, they take Greg Gums Jr., an edge rusher out of Florida. Sixth round, they go Caden Curry, the edge rusher out of Ohio State. And in the seventh round, they take Seth McGowan, the running back from Kentucky, and the wide receiver out of Oklahoma, Deion Burks. 2 teams taking Oklahoma players with their last pick in the draft. So I'm sure my guy Mike Rose loving that. But yeah, this is I'll be honest, this is a draft class that, for the Colts, I don't know a ton about many of these players at all. I'm familiar with C.J. Allen. I was kind of paying attention to him as a prospect, so I knew the Bills were going to be on the linebacker market. I didn't really feel strongly either way about C.J. Allen, but the rest of this class, not a lot of guys I was too terribly familiar with here.
I'll talk about it real quick because I also don't have much about this draft class. I also like the C.J. Allen pick because, again, like with the Anthony Hill pick last for the Titans, he was a guy that I was following as a day 2 guy for the Raiders. But beyond that, I also don't have a lot of knowledge on a lot of these later round picks. So I'm sure Mike's got something though.
Yeah, I want to talk about a couple of them. Obviously, Allen, I think this is interesting, right? Because we talked about they didn't add a lot in free agency, but I think their top 2 picks, C.J. Allen and A.J. Halsey, both could start on this defense next year. I mean, I think Allen really doesn't have much competition to start at linebacker with them moving on from Zaire Franklin. So to me, it looks like Allen's going to start right away, and I think he was
I'll tell you right now,
both of
Mike,
you
on their
kinda
depth
mentioned.
chart on ESPN, which says this is not indicative at all. Things can change, but right now they have Allen slated in to start a middle linebacker, and they also have Bryce Bottiger scheduled to start as well. So they have two of these rookie linebackers. ESPN does as starters on this team.
Yeah, there's just not much there, right? So I don't blame them for doubling up there with two of their first four picks. I like Allen. I can't speak much on Bryce Bonder, but I like Allen. I think you can never go wrong with Georgia defensive players
Yep,
in
absolutely.
terms of football playing ability, maybe some other things,
Yeah,
but
off the field stuff,
decision
maybe not.
making
Yeah.
and maybe not the best.
Yep.
But on the field, you like Georgia defensive guys. I think Allen is a guy who kind of similar to Anthony Hill. I think the position's undervalued, but he's a guy who was potentially a top 30 prospect in this draft class just off talent. And then Halsey is an interesting guy. He's a hard hitting safety. Their safety room, you mentioned it, Pete, is pretty terrible outside of Cam Bynum, who
Yeah.
came in last year's free agency class from Minnesota, 1 year after leading the NFL in interceptions. And he's also known for his celebrations after his interceptions, if you have seen some of those that have gone viral over the last couple of years. So they're desperately looking for someone to start opposite Bynum. You mentioned, Juwana Thomas and Jonathan Owens. If it's AJ Halsey, I think the Colts would be thrilled. I think he has a real opportunity to do it. And Bynum is more of that, coverage guy. Halsey, I think, complements him well as kind of a downhill, hard hitting safety there from an LSU defense that was pretty good last year. And then I have to talk about my Oklahoma guy. Otherwise, what kind of Oklahoma fan would I be? Deion Burks is a very fun player, but the issue with him is he's incredibly slight. Just 5'9", 180 pounds, and he's just not big enough, I don't think, to probably stick long term in the NFL as an impact guy. But we'll see how they use him. They might use him in the return game. I wouldn't be terribly surprised if he makes the roster to potentially return kicks and punts, because he is good with the ball in his hands, and he tested unbelievably well at the combine. He was like top of the board in every metric for the wide receiver. So it'll be interesting to see, because there's not much after Pearson Downs. Maybe he has a shot to carve out some kind of role there next year, but the upside is limited, I think, just because he is so small.
All right, so we'll go into our predictions now for the Colts next season. So I like to start out, I look at their depth chart, and I kind of just think about what I think about this team. And so I'll immediately starting to look at offense. I do like parts of their offensive line. They kind of have some unproven commodities on this offensive line, but Quentin Nelson, you could argue, one of the best linemen in the NFL, no question about it. He's been phenomenal ever since they drafted him. A Notre Dame guy there. I love Quentin Nelson too. But a line that I'd say
Shocking.
I would say right now, this line, looking at it today, is probably somewhere in the middle of the pack. I don't think it's necessarily one of the top units in the league, but I don't think it's one of the bottom units either. It's right around the middle. The receiver room, I like Josh Downs. Josh Downs was kind of quiet last year. Even when Daniel Jones was healthy, Josh Downs really didn't do much last year for the Colts. I do like him. We'll see how he does this year under Shane Steichen in this offense. I'll be curious to see if he can bounce back. The receiver room, though, I'll be honest with you. If Alec Pierce doesn't pan out and do what he did last year, this is not a receiver room with a lot of depth. This isn't a receiver room that, there's some teams where they have guys with the third, fourth guy in the depth chart where I'm like, yeah, I'd be curious to see him play. Right now, Nick Westbrook-Akine is listed as their third receiver, and I don't love that for them, and I don't love the depth here past him with Deion Burks and guys like that.
Just real quick, looking at this wide receiver depth chart, I cannot believe it that Laquan Treadwell is still in the NFL.
Yeah,
I cannot believe
I
it.
forgot about him
We couldn't
completely.
just go through and not mention Laquan Treadwell.
Former Minnesota Vikings, a Ring of Honor player, from what I understand.
First round pick. I bought his jersey the night of the draft.
Can't believe he's still in the NFL.
Well, he's currently scheduled to be like the 8th receiver on the Colts right now, so things are going well for him.
Hopefully he gets cut.
But obviously, Tyler Warren was fantastic last year as a rookie, and a lot of people expected that. He was one of the most highly touted tight ends coming out of the draft. I was going to say since Brock Bowers, but like those two were both kind of highly touted tight ends before those two. It'd been a while since there been a tight end.
Don't forget about Colton Loveland.
I was going to say I like Colston Loveland more than Tyler Warren in last year's draft. I'll just say that.
Okay, listen, he's on my dynasty team. I like that, Mike.
He's on all of my dynasty teams.
Running back room, Jonathan Taylor. I mean, what else can you say? Jonathan Taylor's a top 5 running back in the NFL, probably. I mean, he's just that true workhorse that you can give him the ball 30 times a game and he'll get you 150 yards a lot of the time. If you have a semblance of a passing attack, we did learn that if you just try to give him the ball and do nothing else, he won't get you 150 yards a game. You got to be able to pass the ball a little bit. Say offensively, I'll be honest. I feel like I expected to like this offense a little bit more than I did looking at the depth chart. But now that I'm staring the depth chart in the eye, I like Jonathan Taylor. I do like the line. I like Tyler Warren. But past that, I don't love the receiver room, and I'm not completely convinced that Daniel Jones is going to do what he did last year. Defensively, up front, they got some names that I like. I like Latu. He's a guy that I've done a little homework on in the past. He got traded around our Dynasty League quite a bit, I remember. DeForest Buckner, that's a name that I haven't heard in a while, but I think he was solid for them last year. Don't quote me on that. I don't know if they had the exact stats for him last year. Up front, though, they got some guys. The secondary, as Mike mentioned, they made a huge trade for Sauce Gardner, which is funny because when they traded for Sauce Gardner is like when their season went downhill. And it's no fault of Sauce Gardner, but I think Sauce Gardner was like 0-8 on the Jets. And then he got traded to the Colts, and the Colts went 0-8 after they got him, or 0-7 or whatever it was. So Sauce Gardner ended up like 0-15 last year because it was just unbelievable.
It was a tough year for Sauce.
Yeah, but obviously, I do like him. I like the secondary. I like Cam Bynum. He's a very fun safety to watch play. Charvarius Ward, I will say, I liked him about 5 years ago. Don't know if I love him as your second corner at this point in his career, but I mean, things can change there too. They got Cam Taylor-Britt. They got Jonathan Edwards. They got a few guys that could end up moving up and taking that second quarterback spot. Overall, as a defense, though, and we talked about the rookie linebackers, those are kind of a wait-and-see type of deal. Akeem Davis-Gauthier will probably be the other starting linebacker for them. Defensively, though, I think this is probably like a top 10 defense in the NFL, and I think like right around 10. I think probably somewhere, I have them in the range like 10 to 13. They're going to be somewhere there in the NFL. Offensively, I don't necessarily love the receivers they have. I'll be honest, the more I've sat here and talked about the Colts, I think I like the Colts less than I did when I started talking here. The one thing I will say, though, to the Indianapolis Colts, I've looked at their schedule. And this might be like the easiest schedule I've seen for a team yet, just looking through the schedule. I feel like every team we've looked at, we've been like, oh, wow, they have a pretty tough schedule. I see a lot of games in here that like I wouldn't be surprised that the Colts won. Now, obviously, it's the NFL. None of these games are gimmies. But looking through their schedule, I mean, they play Cleveland. They play Tennessee twice, obviously. They play Pittsburgh. They play Washington. They play Kansas City, who's a team that I like, but obviously
Minnesota.
It's hard to see. They play Minnesota. They play Miami. They play a lot of games that like I just wouldn't be stunned if they won. So I think that's probably the thing I like the most about the Colts is their schedule. However, I think right now, if you're asking me today where I think the Colts finish, I'll be honest. I think maybe like 8-9 wins. I don't like them to make the playoffs. I'm not going to sit here and pick the Colts to make the playoffs. Now, if they did, if you told me Jonathan Taylor rushes for 2,000 yards and Daniel Jones is efficient enough to make their passing attack at least a threat, I wouldn't be stunned. But as of today, my gut reaction looking at this team, where I think they're going to finish, I think they're going to finish third in the division again, and I think they're going to have about 8 or 9 wins.
I think the range of outcomes with this team is staggering, where like it could just completely blow up and just be awful, I think. But I also think they could be really good, which means it's probably going to land kind of like you said, somewhere in the middle where they win somewhere between 7, 8, 9 games. Obviously, Daniel Jones coming off the Achilles tear, you don't know where he's going to be at. He's trending up to start week 1, but what kind of player is he going to be coming off that Achilles tear? My biggest concern with this offense is they're very clearly, like, when you look at receivers, they're going to play 2 receivers a bunch.
Yeah.
And their number 3 and number 4 receivers are basically blocking receivers in Westbrook-Akine and Ashton Dulin. Westbrook-Akine started for years on those Derrick Henry Titans teams because he was such a good blocker, and he would just sit opposite A.J. Brown and, just literally be a run blocker. He had very little ability as a receiver. He had like that weird touchdown streak. I don't remember if it was last year or 2 years ago. We scored like 8 straight games, but
yeah, I do remember that.
That's basically the highlight of his receiving career at this point. And obviously they have all these tight ends. Like, they're very clearly going to try and run the football. And I look at this team and I look at Jonathan Taylor and the workload he had this year, and like, history tells you he's going to get hurt this year. Like, you just don't see running backs get that big of a workload and come back the next year and stay healthy and handle another workload like that. There's not a case of it in the history of this league, particularly in modern times, for a running back. We saw it with Saquon Barkley last year, where he had so much of a workload 2 years ago, and last year he missed some games. The efficiency was down. Like, these guys just aren't built for that much wear and tear. So for an offense that pretty explicitly has built a roster to say we're going to run the ball. We have these blocking receivers and all these tight ends. Like if Jonathan Taylor misses time, DJ Giddens, Seth McGowan, Ulysses
One thing I will say
Bentley
though, Mike, with
IV.
Jonathan Taylor is he's historically not, and you can go back to his college days in Wisconsin where they just ran the heck out of him. He is a guy that historically has not missed a lot of time, despite always having a heavy workload since his days at Wisconsin.
Yeah, but like that's the thing. Like even if he plays, the efficiency is going to be down.
Yeah, I
Like
get what you're saying.
it just is.
Yeah,
And you
eventually
need-
all this will catch up, Mike's saying.
it always catches up to you. And like even look at Derrick Henry, right? Derrick Henry is still one of the best running backs in the NFL. He's a literal alien. But if you look at Derrick Henry's career stats from his super big workload years where he had like 400 plus touches to the next year, like there always is some sort of regression. Even for a guy like Henry, who's probably going to be a first ballot Hall of Famer, you know what I mean? So it's just one of those things that I think is unavoidable and kind of the obvious red flag for this Colts team. Defensively, I don't think they're a top 10 defense in the
Yeah,
NFL.
no, I was surprised when
think
Pete said
they're-
that.
I think they're much more middling to bottom half of the league. After Sauce, the corners are alarming. They have a lot of retreads. Charvarius Ward and Cam Taylor-Britt, like you said. Those guys were cornerback twos on Super Bowl contenders like 4 years ago. When we were talking about the Bengals and the Chiefs, what those guys were, and Trevor spent some time in San Francisco as well. But I don't trust those guys right now as things stand. Who knows who the second safety is going to be? Maybe it's AJ Halsey. Maybe he's really good. Maybe the third round rookie can't come in and start right away. Who is it going to be then? Because they have nobody proven to step into that role. The linebackers are completely unproven. Up front, you got Latu, a good young player. Buckner, obviously, is a stud, but Grover Stort's okay. He's a plugger. I mean, I have concerns about this Colts roster. I think there's a lot of red flag like alarm bells that when you look at this roster can be raised. Now, with all that said, they're probably going to win 8 games, right? Like even if. Because not everything is probably going to go wrong all at once. If it all goes wrong all at once, like they could win 3 games. Like if Jonathan Taylor's hurt and Daniel Jones is hurt and it all goes to hell,
Or just not playing well.
Not hurt. If Daniel Jones just doesn't come back as good as he was, and Jonathan Taylor regresses in efficiency, like it could get really ugly.
I'll be honest with you, Mike. Just looking here at the roster as is, like I don't know how high I feel they can fly. Like I don't know how I feel about their max ceiling about this team.
I mean, if Daniel Jones comes back and is Daniel Jones for the first 10 games, and Jonathan Taylor somehow doesn't regress. Like they could win 12 games and it wouldn't be that crazy.
Yeah, I mean,
especially because, like you said, the schedule's
the best thing. Yeah,
that's gonna light you on fire. Like they get Kansas City in week 2, so while their quarterback's recovering, they're gonna get Mahomes who's recovering. I think that's a break, and there's a lot of winnable games on the schedule, and they can split with the Texans, they could split with the Jaguars. Like that wouldn't be that crazy of a thing to see happen. So there's a path.
The Jaguars famously can't win in Indianapolis.
Exactly. So there's a path here for sure.
I mean, like with every team,
it's going to be tough.
Like with every team, quarterback play is huge. We just talked about it with the Titans and what year 2 Cam Ward's going to look like. And yeah, I mean, Daniel Jones, if he doesn't look like him, like I don't even know if he's healthy. I actually expect him to be what he was last year. I mean, maybe that's a Shane Steichen thing, and if he's just a product of Shane Steichen's offense, then maybe maybe we do get another version of Daniel Jones that we saw last year. But I honestly like the Titans defense more than the Colts defense. I still think Pete saying top 10 defense was a little shocking to me. I don't really like this defensive line much. I mean, DeForest Buckner feels like he's been in the NFL forever. I don't know how much juice he actually has left in the tank as your starting defensive tackle. This is just kind of a young defense for the most part that I don't really love a lot on it, other than Sauce Gardner, really. It's just kind of the offense. It's this team for me is just how far does this offense carry them, and it's crazy saying that with Daniel Jones being your quarterback. But yeah, I mean, Jonathan Taylor, the health of Jonathan Taylor is huge. I completely agree with Mike. Eventually, this is going to catch up to this the usage of Jonathan Taylor will catch up to him. Is it next year? I don't know, but would it shock us if it is? No. Alec Pierce, we talked about during the free agency. Mike likes him. He's kind of that downfield wide receiver. He was very productive last year, and I also like Josh Downs. But beyond those two guys, Josh Downs, by the way, is a 5'9" wide receiver, so he's not exactly like a guy that can just completely take over a game all the time. Tyler Warren, there's not much to be said there either. He's a very, very good tight end already. For what he did last year as a rookie. So yeah, I'm just not really in love with the Colts. I actually think I like the Titans more sitting here and thinking about it than the Colts after looking at the Colts roster. I really like the Colts defense. I think Robert Saleh is going to be good with them, and I just like that team a little bit more than the Colts as we sit here today. But again, like Mike said, if everything goes right, all of a sudden maybe we're back into a wild card talk and they could sneak into the playoffs, but I just don't know if I see that. So Daniel Jones' health and how he plays is definitely very, very key to the upcoming season for the Colts.
I will also say, I don't think anything that Daniel Jones did last year is super.
Oh yeah, it wasn't game breaking.
Yeah,
replicable.
He was like a point. He was like the Brock Purdy. He's like point guard, just doing.
He distributed the ball well. He was fairly efficient, but we've seen Daniel Jones have efficient passing seasons.
Yep.
He has multiple years in New York where he was 65 or 67% completion guy. You're going to have some ugly turnovers.
He was fortunate that his running back was running for 100 yards a game.
But I don't think he did anything last year that's if Daniel Jones came back and played the exact same way next year. I think there was people last year who were kind of over exaggerating what he was actually doing.
It was really more surprising than anything.
When he was on his connection with Tyler Warren was phenomenal, and his connection with Alex Pierce was phenomenal at one point.
I think
when they were
people
winning
were more
games.
surprised that they were winning as many games as they were.
Yeah, I agree.
Well, some of the teams they were beating too. There were some teams that they were beating that were kind of surprising, and I think that added into that.
But I don't think Daniel Jones was a light in the world.
I agree. I agree with you, Mike. I agree.
They were winning games.
Yeah,
so
we are making it sound like Daniel Jones was in the MVP conversation or something.
Well, because there was people who had him in the MVP conversation.
He was at one point when they were 8-1.
It should have been just Jonathan Taylor. Right? It should have just been Jonathan Taylor.
The issue was he was in the MVP conversation. He had no business there. He was putting up fine numbers. He finished the year with 19 touchdown passes. He ran for a lot of 1-yard touchdowns last year. It's fine. He wasn't doing anything. I think the biggest thing with Daniel Jones this year, and now that I mentioned the 1-yard touchdown, is is he going to be able to move?
Yeah, because that is definitely a huge part of his game. Yeah, absolutely.
If he can't move it, at least 70 or 80% of what he could before, that's going to be a problem for this offense.
No, I completely agree. When you talk about Daniel Jones, the mobility, when they were winning games in New York, Daniel Jones was rushing a lot. So, he moves around in the pocket. He's a guy that needs to have his mobility. 5
rushing touchdowns, by the way, last year.
We'll have to see how he looks. But, that'll wrap it up for the Colts here. We're going to end this segment. We'll be back on the other end with the team that finished second in the division last year, the Houston Texans. Stay tuned. Welcome back to First and 15. We wrapped up with the first 2 teams in the AFC South. We'll move on now to the team that finished second place in the division last year, the Houston Texans. And as always, we'll start out with their free agency moves. Finally, a team that didn't make 30 free agency moves, and I also have to read off names of guys I've never heard of here. They only made about 8 moves, and here's what they did. They were pretty big moves, the moves they did make, though. They bring Reed Blankenship, the former Eagle safety. They signed him to a 3-year, $24 million deal. They bring in Braden Smith. I believe he was on the Colts last year when they were winning games, I want to say. They signed him to a 2-year, $25 million contract. He's an offensive tackle. They bring in Wyatt Teller, the guard, to a 2-year, $16 million deal. They bring in Logan Hall to a 2-year, $14 million deal out, and they also bring in Dominique Robinson, the defensive end out of Chicago, to a 1-year deal. They add Foster Moreau to the tight end room, and they also signed Evan Brown, the guard, who was in Arizona last, to a 1-year deal worth $3.5 million. So not a ton there, but obviously they made it pretty clear that their offensive line sucked, and they were trying to fix that with the limited amount of money they had.
Yeah, there's no doubt Smith and Teller, big upgrades to what they had on this offensive line last year when C.J. Stroud was running for their life. I think also kind of worth including in this free agency section, I suppose, is the acquisition of David Montgomery after Joe Mixon missed last year for. I still don't think anyone knows what happened to Joe Mixon, but he's basically retired now.
Yeah.
Does anyone? Did we ever find out what happened to Joe Mixon?
No, I never once heard what happened.
Yeah.
It was a weird situation coming into the year, and then he just didn't play.
So he's just basically retired at this point, and he's gone. And so they're going to have David Montgomery, who comes in a trade from Detroit to most likely, I would assume, Takeover's number one back there. So that counts to me as like a free agent acquisition for them. Blankenship, they broke up the only two white guys that shared a secondary maybe in the history of the NFL with Blankenship and DeJean in Philadelphia. They bring him in. I think he's a very talented safety. I think he represents a big upgrade in what is an excellent back end of this defense already. So I think I like what they did in free agency. They didn't lose much either. They're one of the few teams that, maybe 6 guys departed, and I think they were mostly happy to see him go. Guys like Christian Kirk and Christian Harris, Harrison Bryant. Nobody's going to miss those guys too significantly in Houston this year. So I think I like what the Texans did, despite it not being a super active free agency period for them.
Yeah, I also like it. I think they just kind of added pieces to this to what was already a pretty solid defense. And I mean more than solid, one of the best defenses in the NFL. Like the Logan Hall addition, the Reed Blankenship, as Mike talked about. Again, offensively, the same thing with the Wyatt Teller and the Braden Smith signings. So I think they had like a solid roster already together, and I think they just did a good job of just kind of adding pieces around that. So that's kind of how I view this free agency class, and I liked it.
All right, so going to the draft now. The Texans were very aggressive in the draft. Their general manager, Nick Caserio, actually traded up in the first round to get his guy, and same thing in the second round. They were an aggressive team. And on the first round, pick 26, they take Kalen Rutledge, the guard, out of Georgia Tech. So continuing with the trend here of offensive line, they take a guard in the first round. With the second pick, they take the defensive tackle out of Ohio State, Caden McDonald. Also in the second round, they get Marlon Klein, the tight end, out of Michigan. Round 4, get a pair of guys. They get Fabechi Nwawu, a guard out of Oklahoma that I'm sure I just butchered that name brutally. And they also get Wade Wooders, the linebacker out of Clemson. Round 5, they take Kamari Robinson, the safety out of USC. Round 6, they go Lewis Bond, the wide receiver out of Boston College. And round 7, they go Aiden Fisher, the linebacker out of Indiana. So Kalen Rutledge, guy who played at guard Georgia Tech, I think he'll immediately start for them on that offensive line, especially the guard spot where they had a lot of issues last year. They address a huge need there with Kalen Rutledge. I like that pick for them. And Caden McDonald, who was very productive in his career at Ohio State, a very good run stopper up the middle. I think he'll slot in nicely to a role on the very, very good defensive front already for Houston. And, he's not going to have to play every down with how good this front is, too. He's a guy that can rotate in. I do think you'll see him definitely getting a solid amount of playing time for this defense. Marlon Klein, a tight end out of Michigan, kind of more of a blocking tight end. I'll be curious to see how he slots in this role on the team. But yeah, that's kind of where my knowledge of the players they selected ends.
I'll go quick because I don't got much other than the Caden McDonald. I've been saying it for a couple episodes now. I like that draft pick. Again, a guy that I would have liked the Raiders to have considered, which actually the Raiders moved back from that pick for the Texans to take him, which is whatever. But again, another body up front, another piece to like kind of with their free agency class. I think it's just another good piece to that defensive line. You're not expecting him in day one to come in and start or do anything crazy. I think he's just another good guy that you can rotate in and out, especially early in his career, and that's really all I got with this.
I do want to say quickly, too, before we give it to Mike, it is interesting because, honestly, I'll be honest with you, taking a blocking tight end in the second round is a little rich for me. But at the same time, like, their offensive line was so bad that maybe they're just looking at that as another extension of the offensive line, getting Marlon Klein in the second round, as they probably will bring him in a lot of run situations. So I'll send it over to Mike now, but that was just a little quick food for thought I had.
Yeah, I think also, like, that's teams just were overdrafting tight ends in this draft at an alarming rate. I think just off the fact that the Rams looked good, like using 40 tight ends last year, and teams are like, we can do that.
Yeah.
And they just start taking guys who aren't actually capable of catching the ball, like in the second round. It was very bizarre. Rutledge is interesting, right? Because I think he would start at guard for like 70% of the teams in the NFL. But you bring in Wyatt Teller. They extended Ed Ingram, who, after being one of the worst blockers in the history of the league in Minnesota, turned into a serviceable guard for them last year, which, as a Vikings fan, really pissed me off, if I'm going to be honest, because they basically gave him away and he was really good. But I wonder where Rutledge is going to slot in.
They have him right now. ESPN shows him as their starting center at this point.
Yeah, I imagine that's an option. Maybe he pushes Wyatt Teller to be left guard. Like, I don't know exactly what that's going to look like, because I think they like Ed Ingram. They extended Ed Ingram, and he probably has the most invested in him money-wise at this point. So it'll be interesting to see where they put Rutledge. Long-term, he's probably a guard, but like maybe he just takes the center and becomes the long-term center for them. It'll be interesting to see how they play that. McDonald, I think we've all talked about him and how like good of a fit this is for Houston. He's just going to come in. He's going to play 2 downs on a defense that's absolutely stacked, and he's going to eat up blocks, and you're not going to be able to run in the middle against him. And on a defense that is so good, he just slots in immediately as a guy who's going to have a huge impact for them right away. Beyond that, I can't say a lot about this draft class. Wade Woodaz is one of my favorite names in college football for the last couple of years.
Solid.
I don't have much to say about him as a player. Kamari Ramsey, I think, is an interesting guy, because I think he plays a lot like Jalen Petrie, who's on this roster already, a former Texans draft pick who's played some safety and some nickel for them over the last couple of years, just in terms of kind of the attitude that he brings into the secondary. And I think Ramsey kind of fits that, physical, tough-minded attitude that this whole secondary kind of has. I mean, you watch Derek Stingley or Kamari Lassiter, their corners, like they all kind of play that same kind of mentality. And I think Ramsey fits right in with that group. And it'll be interesting to see, like, as a 5th-round pick, I think in most places he doesn't develop into much.
Yeah,
but I think
really like this for Houston.
I think in this secondary, he could slot in and potentially develop into a guy who, makes an impact for them, learning from some of these other guys that kind of play with that same kind of nasty, I guess, for lack of a better word.
All right, so we'll go in now to the predictions for the Texans in this upcoming season. And, as always, I'm going to start looking at their depth chart. We'll go offensively first. Worth noting here, C.J. Stroud, coming off the worst statistical playoff game in NFL history when they lost in the playoffs last year. C.J. Stroud, I forget, I don't remember if it was QBR or what the metric was, but he had the worst one in NFL playoff history, which is insane to me, thinking about some
Probably
of the quarterbacks.
both. Probably didn't matter what metric.
Yeah,
it was pretty ugly.
It was terrible. He just looked bad if you watched him play. But that's crazy to me when you consider like guys started games like Connor Cook started a playoff game for the Raiders, or who was that guy that started a playoff game for the Cardinals? Ryan something, I forget, but he was pretty bad too. But
Joe Webb started a playoff game for the Vikings.
Joe Webb
didn't play quarterback ever again.
Who started against the Bills for Miami like 2 or 3 years ago?
Skylar Thompson.
Skylar Thompson started a playoff game.
Thompson,
So whenever we're saying C.J. Stroud had the worst statistical playoff game of all time, it's pretty insane when guys like those were also starting playoff games.
Yeah, Connor Cook and Matt McGloin weren't in the NFL much after that game either.
Yeah.
Joe Webb never played quarterback again.
I don't think either one of those
He
two
became a wide
either
receiver.
did.
Yeah, no, it's pretty insane.
Switched positions.
Yeah.
But looking at this offense, I will say I think they got a lot better on the offensive line, which they had to do because that offensive line wasn't helping C.J. Stroud. Now, C.J. Stroud was bad on his own right, but the offensive line was not doing him any favors either. They upgrade there. I do like bringing in Braden Smith. I think it's a big upgrade at tackle for them, and they were not good at all at tackle last year. As we mentioned, Wyatt Teller comes in. He'll start for him immediately. Rutledge, we'll see if he either starts at guard or tackle, or guard or center, excuse me. Probably going to be the center. Ed Ingram, like I already talked about a bit. Other weapons? I do like their weapons. Nico Collins, when he's playing good, you can make an argument he's a top 5 receiver in the NFL. I personally don't have him quite that high, but when he's playing his best, he has top 5 receiver capability. Jaden Higgins kind of started to emerge towards the end of last season, and Tank Dell is a guy that I love. I've always loved Tank Dell since he was coming out of the draft in Houston. He's only 5'10", but he plays like he's 6'6". He just catches everything that goes his way. And I will say, him getting hurt, I think, is one of the things that has hurt C.J. Stroud, because C.J. Stroud and Tank Dell, when Tank Dell's healthy, their connection is phenomenal. Those two find each other all over the place. And I think if now this Tank Dell's gotten injured a lot, it's hard to say if he's going to look like Tank Dell has looked in the past this year. But if they get fully healthy Tank Dell, I think that is a huge upgrade for C.J. Stroud, and if we might see him return to some of the former play he used to have if he can have a healthy Tank Dell. Because when we have seen the best C.J. Stroud, Tank Dell's been healthy on the field. Defensively, there's not a ton I can say here that I know you guys haven't already said or you're going to say in a second here. This front is filthy. Will Anderson Jr. really emerged last year. I mean, he already was known as a great defensive player, but last season he kind of emerged as maybe one of those top 3 or 4 defensive ends. I mean, he was fantastic. Daniel Hunter on the other side obviously is phenomenal as well. I'm sure Mike Rose can tell you all about him, watching him in Minnesota for years. Their tackles, Tommy Tagaya, Sheldon Rankins. Now they bring in Caden McDonald, who's going to kind of mix in there a little bit too. And Logan Hall. I know Tyler's huge on Logan Hall. They mix in some guys at the defensive tackle spot. Their secondary, it's a very, very good secondary. Derek Stingley kind of had a weird arc to his career, right? He goes 4th overall in the draft. And the first couple of years, it kind of looked like he wasn't going to be worth that pick. However, last year, he really started to emerge as one of the top corners in the NFL. It took him a few years to kind of figure out the NFL game, but he got it going. He's a great coverage corner now. Has good hands for a corner. He really was fantastic as well. On the other side, I'm not as high on Kamari Lassitier, but whenever you talk about the rest of these guys, I mean, Reed Blankenship at safety, Kalen Bullock at safety, those are great guys. You have Jalen Petrie who can play nickel or safety. It's a very, very good secondary. And then their linebackers, they just have a lot of good tackle guys, a lot of guys that are good against the run, and some coverage guys in here too. You talk about E.J. Speed and Henry Tototo. How do you pronounce that one? I always butcher that one. Toa. I've been butchering that one for years. And Aziz Al-Shir.
This defense is not a name-friendly defense.
No, this is not one.
They're doing no favor.
No. I will tell you, though, Al-Shir is a player that I like a lot, too. He's really good against the run, but he can also cover. I think he's kind of one of the more underrated linebackers in the NFL. He was really good last year. To wrap up my point, this defense is filthy. This is going to be a top 3 defense in the NFL. I wouldn't be surprised if this is the top defense in the NFL next year. This is fantastic. The only spot that I can really judge them is if Derek Stingley gets hurt. I don't love the rest of their corners that much, but I mean, I think that
I'm going to go after you on this, by the way, because I love Kamari Lassiter.
So if Derek Stingley gets hurt, I don't necessarily love the rest of their corners, but at the same time, like, the rest of the defense is so good that it's not like the rest of their corners are terrible either. I'm not saying that Kamari Lassiter is bad by any means. He's not my favorite corner in the NFL. This defense is filthy, though. Up front, they're going to be filthy. Offensively, I don't think I talked about the running back room. Somehow I completely missed that one. I think I got talking about Tank Dell too much, and I forgot about the running back room. I will say David Montgomery, he is, I believe, he's going to be 29 when the season starts. He did look like he was starting to regress a little bit last year. Now, part of that, too, is Detroit started to really give Jahmyr Gibbs the reins to the offense, and they kind of let him run the show. But there were times last year when I was watching David Montgomery, especially in the second half of the year, where he just kind of looked a little slower. So we'll see how he does. However, they do have Woody Marks, who I know they liked a lot. He played a lot last year and was kind of hit or miss in performances. Offensively, though, I kind of want to see how C.J. Stroud does if Tank Dell's back. I think that he could improve a decent bit, and that's where I'm at with this offense. I think the offense, they fixed the line. They have a lot of room to improve. I think it will be a little bit better than it was last year, and defensively, they're going to be one of the best teams in the NFL. My prediction for this team, by the way, Mike, your cameras went off. We just see the name tag Mike Rose right now, but now he's back. But
I felt like I was in darkness here. I wanted to get a light here. I felt like I was looking at my camera. I'm like, you can't even see my face.
So my prediction for this team, now this is hard for me because I think that this team can win the division. I think they're good. I think they're going to be one of the better teams in the AFC next year. The problem is I love the Jaguars. I really like the Jacksonville Jaguars a lot. Roster-wise, this is one of the better rosters that you're going to see in the AFC, I think, as a whole. Right now, I'm going to say they're going to finish second in the division, and that's not an indictment on them. That's just the fact I love the Jacksonville Jaguars so much. Realistically, though, this team, I think their range of outcome, I think they're at minimum a 10-win team, and that's if the offense is just bad. That's if if these additions they made on the line don't really fix anything. Tank Dell isn't healthy and ready to come back, and the running back room is a disaster. I think that is when they get 10 wins. If the offense just goes bad. I think that on the high end, though, I mean, this could be a 13-14 win team, and then they win the division. It wouldn't surprise me. The defense is that good, and I do think that the pieces are there on offense where if it all works, it could be really good too. It's just kind of have to see how that offense works out. But their defense alone, at minimum a 10-win team, I think they're in the playoffs. Mike.
Yeah, I really like this team. This is my division champions for me in the AFC South. I know CJ Stroud struggled at times last year. I love the weapons he has. I also, fun fact, this team leads the league in Iowa State wide receivers. They have 3 of them somehow. In Jaden Higgins, Jalen Noel, and Xavier Hutchinson.
And I like all 3 of them.
And I like all of them. And I love Nico Collins. I like Tank Dell. I think Montgomery coming in is a big upgrade to that running back room. I think him and Woody Marks can kind of put together a poor man's version of what Montgomery and Gibbs were able to do. A much poorer man's version. I'm not calling Woody Marks or Gibbs, but
No, I get what you're saying. I agree.
This defense, we've talked about probably the other 3 best defenses in the league. I think this is kind of the 4th elite defense, and maybe I'm forgetting somebody with Seattle, the Rams, and Denver. Yeah. And it just has no holes. I love this front.
I thought you were going to say Seattle, Denver, and this, and I was going to be like, make sure you put the Rams in there.
Yeah, I think those 3 that we talked about, and then this one here already, and obviously the Rams adding Myles Garrett, which since we've recorded that episode, and maybe Aaron Donald, who knows? But not to get off track here. Kamari Lassiter, to me, is the most underrated cornerback in pro football. I think he's the best number 2 corner in the league, so I've never disagreed with Pete more than I do about Kamari Lassiter. I love Kamari Lassiter. I think he's a 1 on 75% of other NFL teams. I think the secondary is so fun to watch. Not many teams these days make watching defense enjoyable, but the Houston Texans are a team who makes watching a team play defense really, really fun to watch. And I love what Blankenship brings into that back end to kind of fill that secondary spot. The big thing is going to be the offensive line. You mentioned the offensive line. There's probably 3 new starters. Actually 4 new starters, too. We didn't even mention Laramie Tunsil's gone, right?
Yeah.
He was probably the only guy who was worth a damn on that offensive line last year. And they traded him away because he was making too much money. So it'll be interesting to see what happens at left tackle. But I think you bring in Braden Smith, you bring in Kalen Rutledge, you bring in Wyatt Teller, Ed Ingram's there. We'll see what they do at left tackle. I think it should be better. In theory, at the very least, it should be better. And I think this defense is just so good that, I was stunned with how bad Stroud looked last year. And obviously he missed some time as well. And there were some Davis Mills games in there. But I think if Stroud's on the field and playing, he's going to be a lot better. I think this defense is good enough to win you 10 games by themselves. So I think it's a 12 to 13 win team. I could see them playing the Broncos in the AFC Championship next year and playing for a spot to go to the Super Bowl. I could see them in the Super Bowl. I think this defense is that good. And, I would go into war with this defense any day of the week.
Absolutely.
As much as other defenses, like Seattle's defense was probably better last year, but I liked watching the Texans defense more than any defense in the NFL last year. They were so fun to watch. And so I just think if Stroud can get it together and, some of these young receivers could take a leap and Tank Dell can come back and be healthy. And I think they just need to spread it out, let it rip, play some more 4 receiver sets, 3 receiver sets, get Jaden Higgins and Jalen Noel the ball and on field more often than they were last year. I think this could be a really fun team to watch, and I think they're going to win a lot of games, and I think they're going to win this division.
I also agree. I like the Houston Texans actually a lot more than the Jaguars. I like this roster a lot more than the Jaguars roster. We'll get into that, though, soon. This is a wide receiver room that I really like. It's kind of similar to the Broncos in that there's just a lot of young guys with upside that can just kind of do a lot of different things. Mike mentioned the Iowa State guys. I like all 3 of those guys. Tank Dell's health is an interesting one because when he's been healthy and playing, he's been really productive and really good for this offense. And he's just kind of an X factor out there. He can just do so many different things. He's really, really versatile. Nico Collins is just a true number 1 NFL wide receiver. I love this wide receiver room. I think the running back dynamic that David Montgomery and Woody Marks will add, I think, again, is just going to be, another big factor for this offense. CJ Stroud needs to figure it out. If he is anything like his rookie year, this team will win the Super Bowl. And I have no problem saying that. If he is anything like his rookie year, this team is going to win the Super Bowl because this defense and the scheme that DeMeco Ryans runs he is he's a great NFL head coach. He runs a great system. That defense is just top to bottom is just an elite defense. We talked about the free agency moves and some of the draft class moves. Again, there's just so many great pieces on this defense already, and I think they just added around that defense very well. They filled in depth, and I think they've just done a really good job of just making this roster ready to go to war and beat. I think they can go head-to-head against anybody in the AFC. I think they can go head-to-head against anybody in the NFC too. If C.J. Stroud is playing like he was his rookie year. So I really like this team, and I also agree that I think they will win this division.
All right, so that was where we were at on the Houston Texans. Everyone's pretty high on them. Everyone has them with a very high outcome regardless of what happens on the year. And all right, so that leaves one team, the defending AFC South division champion Jacksonville Jaguars. We'll be right back with that on the other side of this. And welcome back to First and 15. We are 3 teams deep. We have one team left to go, the defending division champion Jacksonville Jaguars. So we'll get right into that. We'll go free agent moves, and this will probably be the quickest free agent class of all time because they only made about 3 moves. First and foremost, they bring in Chris Rodriguez Jr. out of Washington, and he'll probably be the backup to Bashaw Tutin, I'd imagine, this year. Chris Rodriguez Jr., a guy that spent a few years in Washington, was kind of in a mixed backfield there. They gave a lot of different guys a lot of different looks. Towards the end of last year, Rodriguez kind of, I feel like, emerged as that guy a little bit. Corey Krosky-Merritt, they shared time. It was a weird backfield, but regardless, he's in Jacksonville now, gets a 2-year, $10 million deal, and he'll be sharing the backfield with Bashaw Tutin now likely. They bring back Monteric Brown, the corner that started outside of Travis Hunter last year. He'll be back on this team, and they also bring Dennis Gardeck, the linebacker, back on a 2-year deal. And they got rid of Travis Etienne. They traded him away, and that really is their offseason there in terms of free agents. Not a whole lot happening.
I got nothing to comment on this.
I mean, I think it's one of the worst free agent classes of all time. you let your 2 biggest in-house guys in Etienne and Devin Lloyd walk. They let Greg Newsome walk after they traded for him in the middle of last year, which is just a horrible mismanagement of assets. And then they signed nobody. I mean, Chris Rodriguez is probably going to start on this team, I would imagine. I just don't know.
And the linebacker they signed is coming off a torn ACL.
I just don't know what they're really doing with
I guess he's just going to replace Devin Lloyd.
Yeah, I mean, it was not a good. We'll get to it more. I think this is probably the worst offseason of any team in the league, and it started with a pretty abysmal free agency class, in my opinion.
And not a whole lot doing there in terms of free agency. In the draft, they did not have a first-round pick. However, they still came away with 10 players in the draft, and they started in the second round with a tight end out of Texas A&M, Nate Borkircher. They also, third round, had 3 picks. They take Albert Regis, the defensive tackle out of Texas A&M. They must have really liked Texas A&M last year. They take Emmanuel Pragon, the offensive guard out of Oregon, and Jalen Husky, the defensive back out of Maryland. Fourth round, they take Wesley Williams, the defensive end out of Duke. Fifth round, they take Tanner Kozoil, the tight end out of Houston, so they double up in tight end. And sixth round, 2 picks, Josh Cameron, the wide receiver out of Baylor, C.J. Williams, the wide receiver out of Stanford. Seventh round, they go Zach Durfee, the edge rusher out of Washington, and Parker Hughes, the linebacker out of Middle Tennessee State. So that is what they did in the draft there. Nothing too major there in terms of anything they did. Borkircher and Regis are really the only 2 players I'm familiar with, so I watched a lot of Texas A&M last year. But outside of that, they not a ton happening there. I'm kind of curious. They took 2 wide receivers late. They took them in the 6th round, which is, whatever, but the receiver really was just not a need for this team whatsoever.
Yeah, I'll go real quick before you go, Mike. This draft is kind of like what we've talked about with the 49ers drafts in the past, where they just went all over the place, in regards to like the consensus board and where a lot of these guys kind of slot. So I think there's like a very real possibility that 2 years from now, maybe even just straight up next year, that we'll look back at this draft and be like, remember these guys, remember this pick, remember when this guy went here, and this Jaguars draft class is just not good. That's how I kind of project this draft class. But I'll send it over to Mike.
I think this was the worst draft in the entire NFL this year. And I don't even know if it was that close. They didn't have a first-round pick because they burnt it on Travis Hunter, who They're now allegedly not even going to play at wide receiver, which is a whole different
No,
discussion.
they've went back on that, Mike. Since they've went back on that.
Well, then they should make up their mind. How about? There's a thought. Borkature legitimately had 38 catches in 5 collegiate seasons for 417 yards. So I don't know what you could have seen in those 38 catches over 5 years that would lead you to believe he was a second-round pick in the NFL draft. Well, the Jaguars saw it, I guess.
Yeah. They got the Wonder Boy kid as their GM. He's,
I'm just gonna be honest. Like this may end up being like one of those draft classes, like you said, Tyler.
Yeah.
Like where you look back in 5 years and not one of these dudes is still in the league.
Yep.
Like I wouldn't be surprised if none of these guys see a second contract. Like it's that bad in my opinion. I do like the second tight end they took, Tanner Kozel. I talked about him on our draft episode. If you didn't listen to that one, you should go back and do so. He was actually really productive in college. He probably had more production last year than Borkature had in his entire collegiate career, if we're being honest. I'll verify that fact before I throw Yeah, he had 700 yards on 74 catches last year. So, I mean, like lapping Borkature in terms of production as a pass catcher. I think there's a lot more upside to his game than whatever the hell Borkature is going to bring to the table. It's just a bad draft, man. It really is. I don't think they did anything to fill the needs they had. I thought it was a terrible mismanagement of their early picks. And to me, there's really like no guys on between free agency and the draft. I think they added 0 players who are like plus impact guys.
Well, Chris Rodriguez might be just straight up their running back.
He's going to start at running back, but he's not a plus impact.
Yeah.
I mean? Like where they lost, 2 really good players in Etienne and Lloyd, and they did nothing to replace those guys.
Yeah, and I actually do like Tootin and LaQuint Allen, probably.
I'm a big baseball Tootin guy.
Listen, I don't hate the guys they have there, but none of those dudes are Travis Etienne.
Yeah, no, I agree.
I'll be honest, even if Chris Rodriguez starts
happens.
the year, I think that Bashaw Tootin will be starting by the end of the year.
What was the guy that they traded to Philly? Why can't I think of his name? The running back they traded to Philly last year. Why can't I think of his name?
Oh, I know who you're talking about. I can't. I'm drawing a blank.
I actually think I like him more than some of these guys.
About.
I don't think I like him more than Tootin. I don't think he was dynamic as Tootin was, but I know who you're talking about. Tank Bigsby, who they traded to Philadelphia.
I don't like Tootin. I think Tootin stinks.
Yeah, I think I like Bigsby more than Tootin.
I like Rodriguez more than both of them.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fine.
I think Rodriguez is going to start here and start the whole year probably.
Yep.
And I wouldn't be surprised if it's Rodriguez and LaQuint Allen. But
yeah, no, I like LaQuint Allen. Syracuse. Shout out.
Yeah.
They also have Amir Abdullah. Don't forget about Amir Abdullah still in the NFL
he plays
at this point in his
special
career.
teams, so like realistically, if Tootin and LaQuint Allen aren't playing special teams, don't be surprised if one of them's out of the scratch.
All right, so
Amir Abdullah plays special teams.
We're ahead of track here because they didn't do much in the offseason. So that gets us right into the prediction for this team for the year. So I'll go through.
Can I go first?
Yeah,
feel free.
I think me and Mike should go first. Pete goes last.
Yeah. Listen, I think this team is just not very good. I think they're going to take a pretty big step back.
Remember actually when I said real quick, Mike, remember when I said that like I was like talking about the Colts or the Titans being like maybe they could take a step forward, and I said the Colts and the Jaguars. I take back that. Like I actually stick with it. The Jaguars, I stay in that.
Yeah.
Okay, but I'll let you
the
continue.
Jaguars are still better than the Titans and Colts. I do.
Yeah, no, I agree. I
don't
agree.
think they're
I agree.
particularly close to the Texans.
Yeah, no, that's where I also agree. Yep.
I think part of the big issue is they don't know what they're doing with Travis Hunter. That is a legitimate problem that they need to figure out what the plan is because they have way too much invested in this guy, trading a first-round pick and taking him number 2 overall.
Well, he needs to play corner. They're so good at receiver, they just don't really need him to play receiver.
But that's a problem. You can't take a guy number 2 overall and just have him play corner and spend 2 first-round picks on him.
Well, I don't know. The way that this draft class went, it might actually be good that they traded that pick away.
Well, the way they drafted it might be good that they traded that pick away.
Yeah, that's
for sure.
Yep.
I don't know. It doesn't look great to me. There's some pieces here that I like. I think the offensive line is pretty mediocre. I'm not in love with Trevor Lawrence. He has moments. He has really bad moments. They're going to struggle to run the ball, I think, compared to last year because Etienne's gone. And I just don't think – I think this is just like a team that is very unstable right now. Like, Is Brian Thomas Jr. staying? Is Travis Hunter playing wide receiver? Parker Washington was the best guy in this team last year, but then they paid Jacoby Myers and traded for him. Where's Parker Washington fit into this whole thing now? Like, they got this young GM and a young coach, and it was fun last year, but I have some real concerns about the sustainability of what the Jaguars are trying to build out there. And they got the first place schedule now, and I know I talked about with the Broncos a couple weeks ago about like the first place schedule isn't terrible this year in the AFC, and there's some benefit to playing the first place schedule and not playing the second place schedule maybe, but it's tough for me to see a world where the Jaguars win more than 10 games. That feels like a pretty hard ceiling to me when I look at the schedule and just look at the roster. I just don't see the path to winning much more than that. And so, to me, there's no path towards winning this division. I think they're battling Indianapolis in the 2-3 spot potentially if the Colts hit the higher upside of their range of outcomes. And they're kind of mucking it up in the wild card picture. And maybe they still make the playoffs. Maybe the AFC wild card is not great this year. I think that's possible. But I don't think this is going to be as good as it was last year. And I don't think that this team has very high upside. I just think the losses of Devin Lloyd and Travis Etienne are too significant, and they did nothing to fill the voids.
No, I agree. Real quick, I'll just kind of touch on it. Like from week 9 on, I said this off air. These are some of the teams that they played and beat. They played the Raiders. They barely won that game. By the way, they went into overtime, and the Raiders did everything that they could to lose that game. They played the Arizona Cardinals, who they also lost to in overtime, by the way. They played the Tennessee Titans. They played the Daniel Jones-less Colts. They played the New York Jets. They played the Daniel Jones-less Colts again, and then they played the Tennessee Titans once again. So we're not talking about a really great end of the year teams that they beat up on to not sneak into the playoffs, but to win their division there, that final run. And you kind of talked about it though with Brian Thomas. There's no guarantee Brian Thomas is on this roster to start the year. So I think Pete said that you just don't need Travis Hunter playing wide receiver. Well, you might if Brian Thomas is traded, and that's a realistic possibility. Yeah, I'm also not sold on Trevor Lawrence. I mean, Trevor Lawrence was, I think, tied for third. Let me just actually double check on that in interceptions last year. Or he's at the very least, he was towards the top in interceptions last year. So I'm just not sold on Trevor Lawrence. I just don't think he's that. Like, I like him. Like, I'm not trying to say I don't like Trevor Lawrence, but like, I don't think he's a guy that's like, well, they got Trevor Lawrence, and that's why they'll win this division, or that's why they'll get to the playoffs. I don't think Trevor Lawrence is that kind of guy. I think he was he benefited from the schedule last year, and Liam Cohen is a very good coach. He's definitely proven that with what he did with the Buccaneers as the OC, and then last year, he's definitely one of the better offensive minds at football. But yeah, I'm with Mike on this. I just think the Jaguars come back down to earth. I don't think that they're going to win this division. I don't think they're going to make the playoffs. And Devin Lloyd, like Mike said, is a very big loss for that defense. He was their best defensive player last year, and they losing him and the leader of the middle of that defense. So I don't like the secondary. The linebacking core is also aging and not great. Josh Hines-Allen and Trayvon Walker are two good edge rushers. I'm not trying to say that they aren't, but this defensive line, I guess I'm not. I like the Titans' defensive line more. I really do. So, yeah, I'm not high on the Jaguars either. But I know Pete is. Pete really likes the Jaguars. So let's send it over to Pete. Let's see what Pete's got with it.
I said I like them to win the division.
You said you really like the Jaguars.
I like them to win the division. I also said that if the Texans hit the 13-win mark, that I said the Texans win the division at that point. My world where the Jaguars win the division involves the Texans' offense not performing well, which is kind of the world I'm in right now. But talking about this team, where I like the Jacksonville Jaguars right now, I do like their offense. I completely agree that Devin Lloyd's a huge loss. Devin Lloyd is a major loss for this team. I'm not off on that. However, I am not as high on Travis Etienne being a major loss for them. I really like the system they have right now. I think Liam Cohen's a phenomenal coach, and I really think they're going to be able to run the ball fine with a collection of Chris Rodriguez Jr., Bashaw Tootin, and LaQuint Allen. I think that I don't expect their run game to take much of a step back from losing Travis Etienne. I think they're going to be okay in that department. Where I do like them, I really like their receivers. Now, Brian Thomas Jr., he may get traded, it's possible, but at this point he's still in the building. At this point I'm still planning on him being in the building. However, he was bad last year. Trust me, as a guy who owned him in a lot of fantasy leagues, Brian Thomas Jr. was not very good at all last year, just dropping open catches. However, despite that, Trevor Lawrence had a great year with Jacoby Myers once they traded him in, and Parker Washington, as Mike mentioned. Parker Washington was fantastic for this team last year, and Travis Hunter was starting to kind of figure it out on the offensive end right before he got injured. I think he had one of his best games right before he got hurt. I anticipate I know Mike said they're not sure what they're doing with Travis Hunter yet, and he's right. There keeps coming various reports. Well, is he going to play just defense? Well, is he going to play more offense? What's the deal? I imagine in the end he's probably going to play some mix of offense. I can't see them just completely eradicating him from the offense. Now, if that's like 8 snaps a game, that's 8 snaps a game. I'm not sure. But I think you will see him get in the mix there along with these other guys. So I'll be curious to see how that ends up looking. Tight end, I do like Brenton Strange. Brenton Strange was good last year with Trevor Lawrence. The line, I'm with Mike there. This is just a very middle-of-the-pack offensive line. There's nothing about this offensive line that pops off the table. However, I don't think it's really bad either. It's not like it's a big detriment to this team. It's just kind of a middle-of-the-pack offensive line. Defensively, I do like this team up front. I think they got a lot of guys there. I really like Eric Armstead. I really like Josh Allen, obviously. You talk about another name that I know I'm going to butcher the hell here, but Olowokon, however you pronounce that one. I like him. He was big last year for this team as well. Their secondary, I do like their corner. Listen, if Travis Hunter is healthy and he can play corner this year, Travis Hunter is a great corner. Monteric Brown was very good last year on the opposite side of Travis Hunter. I do like the secondary. The safeties are a little bit weaker, I will say, for them. But I don't hate what they have at corner. I like Jordan Lewis, too, at the nickelback spot. Linebackers for this team, I just mentioned I like Olowokon. This is a defense that I do like what they have defensively. Is it as good as the Texans' defense? No, not even close. The Texans are a top 3 defense. I do think this is a defense that if everyone's healthy, it could have top 10 upside. I don't know if I would predict them going there.
I actually think I like the Titans' defense more.
But I think if they
got a lot of top 10 defenses.
They have some top 10. Listen, Mike, I've heard you say this is my least favorite draft in the league about 5 teams now. All right.
No, you haven't.
I'm going to make a compilation. I'm going to go through and I'm going to make a compilation.
I don't think that's going to go well for you.
This draft is by far the worst draft in the NFL.
But
there's some bad drafts. This is the worst.
But my point being is I do like what they have defensively, and I really like their offense. Listen, Trevor Lawrence last year looked as good as he had in the NFL under Liam Cohen. He seemed to really buy into that system.
What is that really saying?
And I agree. He hadn't been good up to that point in his school. He hadn't been bad. I don't want to say that he hadn't been good because it's not like Trevor Lawrence had been bad, but he'd just been average when he was projected to be like this all-time great coming out of college. And
some of the turnovers he had last year, he still is kind of average.
Last year, though,
I agree.
He stepped up to the plate. He had a good year last year. And I will say, I'm not we keep talking about the schedule. They have the 22nd ranked schedule in the NFL next year. I'm not terribly concerned about them having to play steeper competition this year. It's not like they're playing a top 5 schedule in the NFL now. They play the 22nd ranked schedule in the league next year.
Yeah, but those metrics are based off last year, right?
Well, that's just what we have to work off right now. That's what I'm working off.
I understand that. But all I'm saying is the Texans, I think we all agree, are going to be better this year than last year. That makes their strength of schedule better than
So where I'm at with the Jaguars as of today,
the Titans are going to be better than next year.
If the Texans win 13 games, I think the Texans win the division. But right now, I need to see C.J. Stroud prove it because C.J. Stroud was terrible last year. You can say what you want about Trevor Lawrence, but C.J. Stroud was awful last year, and it needs to be shown to me that he can play better. Right now, I need to see that, and I'm not the hugest believer in that Texans offense yet. I need to see Tank Dell be healthy. I need to see that running back room produce, and that's kind of where I'm at with the Texans offense. And I think that defense, as I mentioned, is good enough to win 10 games with the offense being awful. But I do think that right now, I just like the Jaguars. They played very good at the end of last season. And listen, we didn't mention in that mix of games, all right, they absolutely decimated the Denver Broncos, who were the 1 seed in the NFL, and they absolutely decimated the Los Angeles Chargers, who were a playoff team in that mix as well.
Denver Broncos team, by the way, that you said that you weren't really high on.
No, I'm not, but they were the 1 seed in the NFL. I mean, that's just the facts of the matter with them. But can
I just say this? Like, I look at their schedule from last year, and I think they got hyped because they won some games against teams that I think people projected to be better than they ended up being. They have early season wins against Houston, San Francisco, and Kansas City, who all at the beginning of the year were like, holy, look at the Jaguars. But like when it was all said and done, those 3 teams all kind of were like, whatever. And I don't know. Like, I just don't see it with Trevor Lawrence. Like, as bad as the Texans' offense was last year, and with Davis Mills playing in one of these games, they still split with the Texans last year.
I think right now I have them at about an 11 to 12 win team, where I think that is winning the division. Unless now, once again, I will preface to what I said in the last segment, where if that offense is hitting, if it's better than it was last season and they win 13 games, yes, the Texans will win that division if that offense is significantly better than it was last year. Just where I'm at right now, I just like what I saw out of the Jaguars last year. I like their offense a lot. I like Liam Cohn, and I think they win 11 to 12 games and win the division as of today. Now, if that Texans offense does take that step, if it's greatly improved, absolutely. The Texans defense is no question better. The Texans might have the best defense in the NFL. I love that Texans defense.
Can I ask you a question?
Yes.
If the Texans offense does not greatly improve, but it mildly improves, they won 12 games last year.
They did.
Would that not already put them above where you're projecting the Jaguars if the offense is even just slightly improved?
I will say that I don't know. I really don't believe in a lot of factors with that Texans offense. I have a hard time buying in it yet.
As bad as they were last year, right? Even if it's just a little better, which is not saying much, they still won 12 games.
I don't know if either of these teams win that many games again, though. I think the AFC will be a little tougher this year with a lot of teams getting healthier. It was a weird year in the AFC last year. I don't think anyone disagrees with that. The AFC was really, really weird last year. I think it's a little bit more stabilized this year, and I think that wins will be a little harder to come by. I don't know if we see those type of win totals this
also,
year.
real quick, like you talk about how you just don't believe in C.J. Stroud. C.J. Stroud wasn't that much worse than Trevor Lawrence.
Last year,
like
yes,
if you want to go off QBR, C.J. Stroud had a better QBR.
I'm talking about watching the games, watching them both play. C.J. Stroud was a million times worse.
Well,
than
I'm just
Trevor
saying,
Lawrence
statistically, it wasn't that worse.
The Texans' offensive line was worse. I think you're thinking a lot about the playoffs where it was really bad. And I also think you have to acknowledge the fact that C.J. Stroud got hurt last year.
No, I give that to him.
He was probably playing injured down the stretch.
I do remember, though, when Davis Mills came in, I remember watching Davis Mills play and thinking, wow, Davis Mills looks better. This offense looks better than it did when C.J. Stroud was playing.
Absolutely, and I think part of that is C.J. Stroud was trying to play banged up, and it just didn't work. I mean, we saw Baker Mayfield once upon a time trying to play banged up in Cleveland. That didn't look real pretty, and it was so bad that they ran his ass out of town, and now they probably feel really stupid because they haven't had a quarterback as good as him since.
And I mentioned QBR, and just for those that are listening that might not know what a QBR stat is, it just is the total quarterback rating stat. It kind of takes a whole bunch of stuff into measurement and puts it together, and again, C.J. Stroud had a slightly better quarterback rating than Trevor Lawrence. So again, like they were pretty comparable in terms of seasons last year. So it's not like C.J. Stroud is significantly worse than Trevor Lawrence.
Just the eye test last year he was, though. QBR is QBR, but if you watch both of them play last year, I mean, one was definitely better than the other.
I'm just very confused on your Jaguars take versus your Texans take. If you believe the Texans defense is better and you acknowledge that Devin Lloyd being lost is a big loss, and you think the Texans' offense is going to at least be slightly better.
I really like the Jaguars' offense. I think you're underplaying how much I like the Jaguars' offense.
I mean, you must love the Jaguars' offense.
I do. I like it a lot.
I love their division last year was decided by one game.
I love their receiver room. I don't think Travis Etienne's going to hurt their running game much. I think they're good enough at passing the ball where the run lanes will stay open. I think you talked about you like Chris Rodriguez too. I think him coming in will be fine. Bayshall Tutin's a home run hitter.
I like him over Bayshall Tutin.
I think that.
I also think I like LaQuint Allen as the number number 2 running back.
I like Bretton Strange. Bretton Strange had a good connection with Trevor Lawrence last year. And I just like Liam Cohen. I just think this is a very, very good offense, and I think that they will continue to put up points this year. Last year, when the Bills went into the playoffs, I told everyone, I said, if we beat Jacksonville, I think we'll go to the Super Bowl, because I thought Jacksonville was the team to beat in the AFC last year. And
that proved to be a terrible take.
And when we beat listen, we probably do go to the Super Bowl if Josh Allen doesn't play the worst game of his playoff career against the Denver Broncos.
It's almost like the Denver Broncos defense deserves some credit
Okay,
for that.
well, no, Mike Rose, you were at that game. Now let's go into this. Some of the turnovers was just Josh Allen fumbling the ball on his own accord, giving it to them.
The Broncos defense deserves some credit for how they played in that game.
They didn't stop us at all. All they did was just get lucky turnovers when Josh Allen went superhero mode.
All lucky turnovers. You force 6 turnovers in a game. You don't get to attribute them all.
Mike, Josh Allen was terrible that game. He just handed them the ball. At one time, he just handed them the ball.
He statistically was the better quarterback in that game. Just had a couple bad turnovers. Like the fumble before half was kind of a fluky one.
We talk about the Broncos' defense being good, but we just kept walking down the field on them. We just kept walking down the field.
They forced 6 turnovers.
Yeah, forced is a very interesting word from the game that I watched.
Well, I was in the building, so I'm okay using the word forced.
Their safety, Hufanga, had a nice pick. That's like the only one I really give to them that wasn't just us being terrible.
I mean, the James Cook fumble is a forced fumble. It's not like he dropped the ball.
Listen, all right, we're getting in the weeds here. We'll save this when we go in the AFC East.
I'm just gonna tell you, I think the Texans win this division by 3 or more games.
I agree.
Like, I don't even think it's that close.
I agree.
All right, well that
me and Mike always agree, and we agree once again.
Hey, that's not true. Me and Mike were both anti-49ers.
That is true. Other than the 49ers.
Me and Mike stood tall on the 49ers.
Is you two have never agreed on something against me. That has yet to happen.
That's true.
Well, maybe we will, Mike, because next week we're going to NFC North, and it's time. We're going to the North.
Are we sure?
Yeah, I'm sure it's time, because I want to end with the AFC East, because I have a feeling that the AFC East will probably be the episode for us that gets like the most people listening, just because of where we're out of located, right? So we'll end there. But
I just checked my schedule. I actually think I have to miss the NFC North.
No. Well, it looks like we got to wait till Mike's ready.
Yeah, so we're going to go NFC North next week. We should be. Now, listen, I do want to add that last week we missed an episode. That's because me and Mike were both really busy with sectionals. Next week is states. And I will tell you, if the Oakfield, Alabama girls are playing in the state tournament, like, we're going to have to get together and see if we want to record earlier in that week. I still need time to edit it, and the state tournament starts Friday at 10 a.m.
Yeah, so, I was actually going to bring this up. I was going to say, like, maybe this is something we talk about on air, just with how busy you guys have been and why there wasn't an episode last week. And going forward.
Yeah, me and Mike were just very busy with sectionals. That's always going to be a thing for me and Mike. If you're not familiar, I'm the director of sports at WBTA. Mike's the sports editor of the Daily News. When something happens in Genesee County high school athletics, me and Mike are like the two guys that are there covering it and bringing it to the people.
And I am also in Livingston County. So.
Yes. The point being, the last week with Oakfield doing as good as they did, and we had other teams like Batavia was doing well too. Notre Dame was playing. Me and Mike were very busy. But to kind of tie that point together, next week we'll have to wait and see. If Oakfield does go to the state tournament, though, we may either miss an episode or upload an episode early. We're just going to kind of have to talk off the air with each other and see what we're doing there. But if you are watching and listening, we appreciate you and just kind of want to keep you in the loop on that.
Yeah. Nope, that's fair.
NFC North. Glow region teams are wagons here this spring.
I will tell you, though, after June 13th, when high school sports season is done, me and Mike are free until high school football. Free, clear, easy, breasy, the Batavia Muck Dogs.
Well, I don't know if I would go that far, but...
I am.
Freer. I'm freer.
Yeah.
Not free, especially not June 13th. So some of us have a awards banquet we got going on. But
what summer sports do you cover? We're getting in the weeds here, but I don't care. I'm curious. What summer sports did the Daily News cover?
I mean, the Muck Dogs, the Batavia Muck Dogs. If you're listening, go Muck Dogs.
We like the Muck Dogs here. Go to hey WBTA getting a summer intern to cover the Muck Dogs. Be sure to tune into that.
And then obviously Bill's camp's going to start. Not that that's going to be a thing where I can record this. I actually just submitted my credential earlier today for Bill's camp, and hopefully going to have a dorm room at Fisher. So,
oh, very cool.
One of those things where I can be live for Bill's camp.
Yeah, we'll be able to discuss a lot of Bill's stuff here, for sure.
So that'll be fun.
All right.
For sure.
Well, we've made it halfway through the NFL, and next week we start next week or the week after, we'll start with the NFC North. And that should be a fun division. That was a fun division last year. I'm looking forward to that one.
Definitely should be a good division.
Prepare for the most emotional version of me you have ever seen.
I got to ask, Mike, just a little sneak peek. Are we high or low on the Vikings?
They're not going to win the division.
Okay.
And they're not going to finish second.
Okay. All
What
right.
about third?
Probably not going to finish.
All right. So that's where we are. We'll get into that next week, and I think the first team we'll be talking about did the Vikings finish
Will
last?
be the Minnesota Vikings.
It was. Yeah, I genuinely couldn't remember.
Was it the Lions?
Oh, I remember.
Yeah. So was it the Lions? I felt like the Lions got snubbed at the end of the season by the Vikings.
Did the Lions finish below us? Because that seems impossible.
All right. Well, that'll wrap it up here for 1st and 15. We'll see you next time, my friend.
Things about to get started. It's 1st and 15.